So I'm going to talk about the Arduino drifting buoy project that I've been working on the past couple years. And this came out of an interest of mine in the Internet of Things. And if you're at a Maker Faire, you probably know about the Internet of Things. And I said, hey, I want to do something about the Internet of Things with Arduino. That was my goal. And I started thinking, well, maybe there's something I could do with a weather station, a connected weather station, using Wi-Fi, using cellular networks. And then I started thinking, just putting something in the backyard, maybe putting it in the woods, isn't very exciting. What would really be exciting is to do something actually at sea. And so the question arose is there anything already out there that is really represents the Internet of Things at sea? And the answer is there is. And it's something that the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration does. It's called the Drifting Buoy Program. And it's basically a network of buoys that we pay for as taxpayers. There's over 1,000 of them out there on the ocean, and they monitor the currents of the ocean. They can be used for modeling the weather, improving weather modeling, and then also be used to look for things like climate change. Is the water warming up in the ocean? So I thought, okay, all these things exist, but it would be interesting to see if I could build something similar. So what these buoys look like is what's shown up here on this picture. They're about well, you see the guy right here has one. It's about 1.5 foot sphere, has a battery in it, it has a satellite communication modem in it, and then underneath it, the thing that's wrapped up here is actually it's called a holly sock. It's really like a sea anchor, and it goes underneath the buoy so that it measures currents, not just on the surface, but really about 20, 30 feet down under the surface. And that's what is deployed out in the ocean. So if you're out on the ocean, you may see one of these, a little white ball floating. It has this long sock, wind sock, if you want to think about it, underneath it. And these are what are used by NOAA. They're about $1,700, so my idea was, hey, could I build something like this and follow it? Turns out you can follow these on the web, but it's a little wonky to be able to do it. You have to really know how to go into the site and follow it, but you really can't get real-time data. So I thought, well, let's see if I could build something like this. That's a maker thing. That's the kind of thing I could talk about at a Maker Faire, right? I hope so. Right? So the first thing you have to know about is how do you communicate? All the Internet of Things that you guys can do as makers, usually it involves either one of two networks. What are the two networks we would probably use as a maker for Internet of Things? Anyone? The most common one would be Wi-Fi networks, exactly, or you could use the cellular network. Wi-Fi is cheap, you can use your own home network for that. For cellular, you need a SIM card, right? You have to pay for a SIM card. You put a cellular modem on a, an internet-connected weather station out in the woods, and it's still going to work. You can't do that in the middle of the ocean, so you need something else. So you need basically what we call SATCOM, satellite communications. And the one that's out there that's very easy, relatively easy to use, and indeed it's what the NOAA buoys use, is something called Iridium, and it's a network of 66 satellites, low Earth orbiting satellites. This was in the news years ago. It actually went bankrupt, kind of got bailed out by the US government, and it's now a consortium, and we're actually deploying new satellites. But they basically have an SMS service. Short messages, almost just like your text messages. They cost about 5 cents a piece, and they go both ways. This is actually a modem that you can use. You can buy this from a British company. They're called Rockblock. Great company to work with, and they make this so that you can interact with it with a Raspberry Pi, with an Arduino. You hook up a couple of these pins, and you're sending messages through a satellite. It is awesome. It is very cool. You basically, I can set it up so that I get a message from a buoy, and it just comes to my email. I can set it up with like an SMS message right to my phone. So it really works really well. And it's incredibly reliable. And this thing, by the way, I have one here. I won't show it on the camera, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So that's what a Rockblock modem looks like. It's that kind of device. And they work great.
You can switch the camera button?
You can. The question, can I? Do you know which button it is? Ah, you can see it, right? Yeah. All right, now how do I go back? How do I go back? One. Okay, I can't do that. So anyway, that's what it looks like. If you want to know, this is the modem. This is what the Iridium company sells. They sell this modem right here. And then this company integrates it onto this board and then adds an antenna. This is actually a patch antenna. So as long as this antenna is pointed at the sky, you will get a message to a satellite. And oh, by the way, you can also get messages to this from satellite. It's very cool. Okay, so once I figured out that I could do the comms, the next question was how much is it going to cost, and is my wife going to let me do this? And the cost for one of these modems is a service fee of $10 a month. You actually pay it in British pounds. Since Brexit, it's actually slightly cheaper than it was. The message per cost, for depending on how many credits you buy, is like 5 to 8 cents per message. About 12 messages per day, 30 days divided by 30 days in a month. It's about $1.29 a day, cheaper than a Starbucks. I gave up Starbucks to do this, and I still act like this. Okay, so the next thing was, what parts am I going to use? How can I build one of these? I did not know much about Arduino at the time, did know a lot about hardware. So the first thing was easy, right? The Iridium modem. That's the only way I'm going to communicate with something at sea. This is a GPS, happens to be from Adafruit. Great company, they just make really good stuff. So those two parts are going to be the comms. The sensors decided that whatever box or whatever packaging I have, I want to know kind of how this object's moving around. And I also want to be able to measure the temperature of the water underneath the buoy. The next thing was to actually have a controller. Used an Arduino controller, which is really also an Adafruit product, Trinket, a real-time clock, which is, most things don't come with real-time clocks, so you need that, and then of course the solar panel. And I have to plug the good guys over at Voltaic Systems. They actually have a booth right next door, and if you ever want to see one of their solar panels, they have them right over there. Very reliable solar panel, 2-watt panel. Okay, so this is basically what the concept looks like. A buoy floats around, gets charged by the sun, occasionally makes messages up to the satellite system, and then it gets sent to the web. I won't go into the web side of this today, but it's fairly, if you're into the web, it's a fairly standard way that you can get the messages, or like I said, you can have them sent to your email. So this is what it actually ended up looking like. So this is the drifting buoy. This is the hardware inside. You see there's actually 3 boxes inside. I'm just a very worried individual at heart, so I ended up waterproofing individual boxes plus an overall waterproof box just to make sure that it would stay. And what you see on the right is the all-up box where it has a stabilizer that basically keeps it upright. And of course you have to test these things. Oops. Let's see if this goes here. Let me try it one more time. So this is actually testing in my on my deck, trying to make sure that in salt water this thing's really going to right itself, because I couldn't guarantee how it was actually going to be deployed by the whoever was going to deploy it. So the next decision was made to make where are we going to deploy it. If you know anything about the ocean, and you may not know anything, there's this thing called the Gulf Stream off the Atlantic coast. It's from Norfolk. It's about 50 miles offshore, 70 miles offshore. So the next thing was to say, who goes regularly 50 miles offshore? Turns out people who go 50 miles offshore every day are basically fishermen. So we ended up calling some charter boat fishermen saying, hey, you got a trip scheduled, I know it's expensive, would you mind taking a small piece of hardware, and unlike everything else, don't bring it back. And sure enough, they did it for me.
Okay, Sunday, July 24th, 2016, dropping of research buoy.
He didn't know what to call it.
Buoy now.
This is off Norfolk.
Sea state's about 2 to 3 foot, kind of choppy, southwest wind.
Can I just keep going?
Good luck, Billy.
There's nothing after me, so I'll just keep going unless Sasha cuts me off. Just keep going?
Yes, keep going.
All right, it's the best thing. So here's what it looked like after about 10 days. It was just offshore. After about 30 days, it caught the Gulf Stream. So after about 30 days, it was about 1,000 miles offshore. And in 6 months, it kind of did a lot of curlicues in the middle of the Atlantic, and eventually kind of caught more of the Gulf Stream and went into the middle of the Atlantic. We're way past the Titanic at this point. And we're basically heading toward the Azores. The Azores are over here, if you're not familiar with it. And as of a couple hours ago, we were about 250 miles off Portugal. And this is the website data. So one of the things I mentioned was the NOAA site doesn't really provide you a lot of feedback on the buoys and what they're doing, but we tried to do that, and I had a web guy, Brian, a friend of mine, work on the website so that you can see all the data as it comes in, and then if you really want to geek out, you can look at all the data here. This is actually the pitch angle, so this is the angle of the buoy relative to horizontal. So whenever you see these high spikes, 150 degrees, that basically means the buoy was kind of upside down. So think of it like, like that. It was upside down, and those were hurricanes last summer. So the question is, you did that, it's surviving out there, what more could we do? We've at least repeated what NOAA does, but we thought, well, there's something else we can do. Many people have asked us, hey, aren't you worried about it getting run over by ships? And I said, well, I don't know, it's probably not going to anything happen to it, plus it's a big ocean. I doubt there are any ships close. And we said, hey, there's a way to know if there are any close ships. And that's what's called the automated identification system. This is a system that all ships have, all large ships have out on the ocean. It basically broadcasts to each and every ship. They broadcast out and say, hey, I'm in this location, I'm a big super tanker, I'm a chemical tanker, I'm going in this direction, and I'm headed to this port. And that allows other ships to deconflict even if their radars go down. So in principle, there should be no ship collisions anymore because they all have this system. So I thought to myself, well, is there any maker class receiver for these messages? And it turns out there is. There's an individual up in the Pacific Northwest, Adrian Studer. I'm going to call him a maker. I think he would call himself that. And he basically makes a off-the-shelf version of one of these, a maker version. Looks like this. I'm not going to put the thing on. It looks like that. You can plug it into your laptop. If you're near the coast, you can have some open source software and you can see ships in your area that are reporting AIS. I took it apart, started hooking it up to my hardware, and sure enough it didn't work. Adrian helped me out quite a bit and said, hey, you really want to use my Raspberry Pi version. So we integrated a Raspberry Pi version. I did probably weeks, maybe months of testing down in Annapolis, Maryland, while my daughter was playing volleyball, and resulted in this, the new version of the buoy with AIS. See the AIS receiver here and a light sensor. Wanted to add the light sensor just so we could know how sunny it was. And this is what it ends up looking like. So this is, unlike Ethan, who you just saw brief, he made his PC board, right? That kid is a genius. I ended up just basically using a solderable breadboard for mine. And then you see the AIS receiver here. And then you also see this new appendage coming off of it, which is an AIS antenna. That is not a satellite antenna. You do not need to have large antennas for satellite or for GPS. You can make those conformal, no problems. So where are we going to put this one in? Well, we said, hey, we put it in the middle of the Gulf Stream last summer, and it's in the North Atlantic now. Hey, the Gulf Stream really starts down here. So why don't we put something in down near the beginning of the Gulf Stream? That would be kind of cool. So we did. And then Tropical Storm Cindy came in June and immediately took it to shore. So that's a picture of a nice beach walker the morning that she was walking the beach, and she sees this green thing washed up on shore. And it turns out she's an electrical engineer. And I get a phone call when I'm on vacation and says, hey, I think I have a piece of your hardware. I'll hold on to it for 2 days, but my vacation's over. Somebody needs to pick it up. So we did. We picked it up, brought it back to Panama City, and we deployed it again about a month later. And this is what you see happened a month later. We finally got it to go south where we wanted it to go. So this is 30 days at sea. Kind of started to get into a little rut here of hovering off the coast of Fort Myers. And then eventually it got a wind or something, we're not really sure, and it looked like it was going into the Gulf Stream. It took off south like it was going to Cuba. This is Cuba right here. And then it kind of hung out here. Sure enough, Irma came and helped us out even more. I've got the data to show that it was flipping over, and Irma took it, and it's now off the coast of Jacksonville as of this morning. So, the Gulf Stream in action. All right, remember we have AIS on there, right? So, turns out the AIS we were able to show works very well. Okay, these are actually 92 ship collections from AIS. All those green little marks here are ships that we collected on. Some examples, we got a NOAA ship, which is a fisheries vessel that looks basically, I think, does fishery research. Remember, that's not a picture, that's just a picture from the web. But we did collect on that vessel. Remember when Hurricane Irma came through, they did humanitarian ops off Key West. So as we came past Key West, we picked up on the USS Iwo Jima. And then also just a couple days ago, of course, we went past Port Canaveral, and we picked up on the Carnival Vista as she was headed out probably for a cruise. So what have we learned? Well, you can make a buoy powered by Arduino, actually powered by the sun, without the shelf parts, and it will survive. The Atlantic buoy's been out there for 420 days and still working. The Gulf Stream really is there. I think we proved that. And also you can successfully collect these messages even from the surface of the water, that, you know, foot above the water. And that's actually the one we collected on that was about 9 miles away. And the big thing is, you know, and I don't know how to really enforce this, but, you know, organization and outreach. So being organized, having a website, and then doing outreach will gain you supporters. People will email me, and also it'll gain you people who will do things you can never imagine. This is a picture of 2 people that actually deployed another buoy off Hawaii for me, and you know, they kind of got them into the idea of what we wanted to do, and they took it from there and said, we got this, we'll deploy it. They deployed it about 500 miles off Hawaii, and you can see that on the website too. All right, and this is just a label that's actually on all the buoys. So this is the label that that woman saw down in Florida, and gave me a call, and we got it back. I don't really want to get them back. I'd love to know what they look like right now, if they're all crusty with crustaceans or not, but can't do much about that. So thank you for coming. I know it's late in the day. You can ask questions now, or if you want afterwards, stop by. So,
how much power is needed for the satellite communications?
So on the website, if you go on the website under the FAQ, there's actually a power plot there. It's a fairly small amount. It's about 500 milliamps, but it's only over about 10 seconds that it takes to charge up a capacitor. So it's actually not that much power. It's just a small spike of power you get, and almost all the time you only send it once. So it's only that 500 milliamps over like 10 seconds. So it's a very small amount of milliwatt hours for that. What's bigger power is just the power to run the AIS receiver. That's about 40 milliamps at 3.7 volts. So that's kind of what takes up. So we change that based on how much sun there is. I can change that time to collect. But that's all data on the website too.
So how much power? So you said your solar cell puts out 2 watts.
It's 2 watts.
How much over capacity do you need?
Oh, so I have this over capacity right now. If I don't use the AIS, I got way more power than I need. If I use the AIS, I have just enough, and in fact, I will run it down accidentally to depletion of the battery. So basically, think of it this way: it's a 2,200 milliamp battery, and I generate about 400 milliamps. So you only need about 5 or 6 hours of charge during the day, and you've charged that battery to its fullest amount. And we never deplete that really. So you got about 5 days of reserve for the days where it's cloudy, if you're not using the AIS a lot.
Do you run the Arduino continuously, or do you power it up and power it down?
Well, so something has to stay alive, right? So the Arduino is a trinket, it stays alive. When it's down, it still uses about 6 milliamps, because most of that's because I did not desolder the LEDs. I could have desoldered the LEDs, and it would probably be 2 milliamps. But that's minuscule, 2 milliamps, 6 milliamps. So the Arduino always stays on. It talks to the real-time clock, which is always on. And it basically is always polling every 30 seconds, a minute. It says, hey, what time is it? Do I need to wake up and do a message or not? And then once it does, then it boots everything else up. It turns on the modem, it turns on GPS. Everything is normally shut down because you don't want it drawing a lot of power. The hardest thing about it, honestly, of all things, is the coming back from a dead battery. That's why you have to be very careful about what you have on all the time. You can't have everything come on at once when the battery, the sunlight hits it, because it just won't start correctly. But generally, Arduinos, if you give them a little bit of power, they'll boot up. They're normal, and then they'll just start their process. It'll start. Sir. Actually,
what is your website?
Well, the website, if you just go to the maker site and just type under Pavelko, but if you want to, just type in Arduino drifting buoy, and you'll find my website. I'm the first Google hit.
Does that work?
Which one? This is an email, but just type in Arduino drifting buoy. I'm the only Arduino drifting buoy out there on the web right now. We'll see after this, you know, after I.
Oh, and the second question, have you looked at doing like a lot of them? So like LoRa or something like that?
So was that last part?
Oh, LoRa, it's kind of...
Oh, no. Yeah, there is some people out there doing, it's like the ground wave. There are some people doing ground wave communications to these in Australia. You can look that up too. I'm probably done. Maybe what I'd like to do now is maybe refine it so that others could take it maybe with a PC board. And I don't want to put too much, honestly, I don't want to put too much plastic in the ocean. NOAA's already doing that. I mean, they generally go ashore eventually. So to me, it's more of an educational thing right now, but I'll continue to do it maybe in a couple different places, maybe Australia, South Africa, just to see what it looks like down there. Yes, sir.
Were there any maritime sort of rules or regulations that were involved in this, or you just sort of, it's mostly in international waters, you don't have to worry about that?
Yeah, it really didn't come up until just now. Next. No, I trust me, I've thought about it. It's in international waters, but it doesn't stay in international waters. You can go on the website, you'll see what happened to one of the other buoys. One of the other buoys is somewhere off the coast of Mexico. Once it goes into Mexican territorial waters, it's theirs. I don't know what they're going to do to me, right? I mean, they could get me for polluting, I guess, but it's a strange area. I don't really know enough about it. There's generally regulations that says, NOAA does this and you should tell them about it and send them back or tell them you have it. But I don't really know what it is, but it's a small scale, so but maybe in the future when there's more Internet of Things at sea, it'll be more of an issue.
Question. You have a picture of a marine turtle. Any marine life trying to eat one of these things?
Everybody asks the same two questions. Does it get hit by a ship, or are you worried about it getting eaten by a shark? I have no idea. When the one came back to Pensacola, it looked pristine, so nothing bothered it there. It does have a light on it, I will say. So every night, you guys go to sleep, or I go to sleep, on the ocean somewhere, you zoomed in on a little spot, there would be a green light, and then another green light when it sends a message that would light up. So maybe, something would swim by and see this light and be interested in it, but I don't know. One more?
Do you know there's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of AIS information on the web?
Yes, oh yeah. So
maybe just coastal, is it?
Yeah, so the AIS, so the question was about AIS information. So if you go on the web, you can get an app that actually shows the AIS tracks. It's free, generally, if you want to see the tracks along the ocean shore, because there's antennas that they put up along the ocean, along the coast. And you can actually put one of these stations up, has a partnership program with these companies, and then send your AIS tracks to them. But once you go away from shore, then it's all satellite based. And for those services, if you want to see the satellite ships via satellite, you have to pay a fee, $100, $500 a year to see those. You can see them, but they're time late, and can't find out what they are. If you want all that information, you have to be a mariner or a company, and you can see them. So ours are free, but of course ours are only within 8 nautical miles of our buoy. But at least I know everything within 8 nautical miles of one spot on the ocean at any one time, and it's free to you. You don't have to pay for that.
How hard is the waterproofing? I assume that's something that you have to worry about.
So that was the hardest part from a structure's point of view. I tried at first a Pelican case. Pelican makes a similar case with a clear top. It didn't work as well. This company is GSI Outdoors. They were nice enough to send me, once they found out what I was doing, send me a couple extra boxes. They're Lexan polycarbonate, kind of a tinted color, and this panel is inside, because I don't trust I talked to the guy over there, Tony, today. He's like, oh no, you can put this in salt water, it's no problem. I'm like, all right, but I'm going to keep putting it inside. So I put him inside and keep everything sealed. And as far as I know, 420 days at sea for the Atlantic buoy, I'm assuming it's still relatively watertight. And it's silicone too, so you got the rubber seal plus it's set in silicone. And silicone's pretty robust. The only thing I was really concerned with was yellowing of the plastic, and also the adhesive. Polycarbonate's really nice because this is good to know if anybody's out there. It has a high surface energy, so epoxy stick to it. So the whole buoy is all constructed inside of all these epoxy fittings, and they seem to hold up under sunlight, which is good. I have a test article at home.
And how much is your total cost?
Total cost was $450. That's about $225 for half of it for the modem. And then I've spent more than that in service charges for the Atlantic one. So if you go on the website, there is a donate button there. If you find it fun to watch them and you want to pay for a couple months of Iridium, I will not reject your payment. There's a lot of people who enjoy watching it. Wake up every morning or maybe every week, we'll check it and be surprised where it is now. So I don't want to pitch it too much, but if you want to support it, feel free.
It's your wife still happy?
She's okay. She's made peace with this. She wanted to go to Brooklyn. This was an excuse for us to drive from Maryland to Brooklyn, so she's fine about that. So I think we're good there. Did you have a question, Miss? What? The green. So this one is painted green. It's anti-fouling paint, so anti-biofouling paint. We were worried that the Atlantic buoy got fouled and sunk, but it actually came back. You can read about it on the website. It died for a while. I shut it off. It's like turning off grandma's, too early on grandma or something. But I just kind of on a spur of the moment said, hey, let's turn it on for another month. I turned it on and it came back. So we don't really know what happened to it. We thought maybe biofouling kind of had sunk it, but it's been working fine for the past month. So, but we put biofouling on it. You don't want to use a lot of it because it does, if it lands on a reef, there are issues with biofouling paints and things. But small buoy, small amount of paint should keep it clean for a long time. And
just needs bird mess on the top.
It just needs
bird mess on the.
Yeah, I mean the good thing is that hopefully with all that, because it moves, it actually self-cleans it, and it's self-cleaning, right? So it should clean itself nicely off on the top. And the only thing really that can go wrong with it is eventually the real-time clock battery could go, the battery could go, but even if the battery goes, it'll still probably send me a message if it's sunny enough. Just won't send them very often. If the real-time clock goes and it loses time sync, then it'll be odd. I'm not sure. I haven't gone through the code to figure out what will happen. It could think it's 1970, but then it will say, hey, I haven't sent a message from 1970. I should send another one. So it's a lot of sophisticated little code things I had to worry about so that it never would do this. It would never die. Sun would come back, send a message, and then because it sent a message, die again, and then come back and send a message and bankrupt me on my service. So it has some, this is good to know about Arduino. I use the EEPROM on the Arduino because once you send a message, it records the day and says, at least I've sent one message today. If you wake back up, check that you've sent. I've sent a message, don't send another one unless you check how many you're supposed to send each day. So that makes it so I should never go bankrupt. Because I don't want to wake up in the morning and I've got 1,000 messages. And I'm sure the guys in the UK are nice, but they're not going to refund me for the Iridium service just because I am a bad coder.
How big's the message?
Message is 50 bytes. 50 bytes for about 6 cents. When the AIS hits, I have to pay double for those, so they're another 6 cents. So I like the ships, they're cool, but they cost me money. But you can do this stuff. I mean, I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm a mathematician by training, but a tinkerer by heart. And I just keep working at things, and that's the thing you got to do. Test things, keep testing them until they work. Get help from people. I wanted to put a slide on here. All the people that have helped, Adafruit people that have helped, Spark Fund, all the people that wrote the libraries for these things. They're just great. And then all the people you saw in the videos, they have no relation to me. I don't even know these people, but they thought it was cool. And the Mariners are just awesome people. They just want to take a mission. You got a mission. Don't tell me exactly where to drop it, sir. You tell me what you want it to do. You want it to get in the Gulf Stream? Okay, we'll go. We'll drop it in. And you want us to video it? Okay, we'll do that. What information you want? I tell them. They just do it. It's amazing. I don't think I'm that inspiring a person, but I think it's more the organization that inspires people, and they just want to roll with it. So I think that's the biggest part to take away from this. All right. Thank you for coming. I know it's late in the day. I do appreciate it. You made it worth our time. Thank you.